Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico and see how much you could save. Insurance can be hard. That's why Geico makes it easy with 24/7 claims, service on the go, policy info in the app. It is easy to Geico. My name is Daniel Dopp, back after a week-long hiatus at home being sick. Here with my two best friends, Mike Clay and Yates. How you guys doing?
A question for you.
Yeah.
When you say you were sick, were you sick of being around Mike and I? Because that would be a reasonable excuse to be away for a week.
I was sick and tired of being around you and Mike is what it was. I just needed a break to myself for a minute, a little bit of like a recharge my batteries, and now I'm back after the Lions got a dub this week, so I'm ready to go.
Oh, that's what it was. It was the embarrassment of the loss. It was Christian Watson having a big game. It just sent him down.
That's what it was.
Actually, like, that's a long, like, so you haven't been here since before Thanksgiving. Wow, what a run for you.
It's been a minute, guys.
Did your ID still work when you walked into the office?
I tried to actually get in, and I had to call somebody security
like that old
to walk
Jamal
me in.
Adams video after he got traded by the Jets, where he walked up and it just didn't work anymore.
It just doesn't work.
So how is Puerto Rico in December?
Stop it! Nice. I was sick. I was home the entire time. I had a bunch of tests. I tell you what, I slept. I took so many meds. I had so many fluids. I am ready to be back here at work. I can tell when you're over being sick because it's like I would rather be at work with my friends than continue to be home and on the couch sleeping. I'm so over it. So
I miss you, bud.
I'm here to talk about football.
Yeah.
I missed you guys. We got week 13 almost fully in the books. We're going to dive into a bunch of the games here. We're going to start with a bunch of injuries. But yeah, I'm just happy to see you guys' face.
Did you have a new nail art as well?
I did, yeah. While I was sleeping,
when you've got 7 days straight of being on the couch,
wife, Rosie,
took
a little cat. She made a little cat on my thumbnail.
Cool. What's his name?
His name's Jobin. This is my cat. He's only got one whisker.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How about that?
So anyways, let's dive into some football, guys. Let's do some things. All right, we're gonna start with some injuries.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Derrick Henry went down, left early in the fourth quarter with a concussion. He actually looked really good, had 2 touchdowns in this game, looked fantastic. A couple things to note about this one. With him leaving, obviously we're going to wait and see how long it takes him to progress through the concussion protocol. Game is a Monday night football game this week, so he gets an extra day against the Dolphins, so we'll see if that works. If anything happens, obviously Tajay Spears would just vault right up to an RB2 at least.
Maybe
I would assume.
more. Maybe more, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, based on his usage yesterday, now they only had 2 running backs active.
Moreover, name a running back other than Derrick Henry or Tajay Spears to rush the football this year for Tennessee.
None, I assume.
None.
Yeah.
Seriously?
But I mean, he'll have some help, I would assume. I don't think he's going to play 95% of the snaps next week, but he did play 64% in this game at 16 carries and 6 targets. So we don't know for sure if he's going to be a 20-touch guy, but it's certainly within the realm of possibilities. He's already played a big role this season, especially in the passing game. So just a tough matchup. Miami 6th best against running back so far this season. So I would say, yeah, I think RB2. I think safely an RB2 if Henry's out.
If Henry's out,
if he's on your waiver wire and you have Henry, I mean, even if you don't, but especially if you have Henry, that's your fallback plan. You scoop up Spears and then you go into Monday night. And if Henry plays, you start him. If not, you start Spears.
He is on your waiver wire, by the way, in a lot of leagues. I mean,
68%.
Whenever I say that, people are like, what league has a guy available with like Tajay Spears? Well, 68% of them on ESPN.com. So go ahead and give it a check at the very least.
Yep. All right. We also had Ramondre Stevenson getting hurt in this one. Had a hip drop tackle, which was not great, unfortunately. Left in the first quarter with an ankle injury. It sounds like he might miss a couple weeks. We need to get a little bit more information on this. Let the MRI come back.
Well, they play Thursday too.
Right. Yeah.
Which, the short week is not going to be.
He's not going to be in the projections when they drop.
Yep.
So
we saw Zeke take over in his place. Is he going to be the guy that you would go to if you? I can't imagine you would want to use Zeke in fantasy.
Maybe you can actually. Zeke's been fine this year. I know the Patriots are just an absolute abomination, and especially only on offense because they're actually balling
their defense
on
is not bad
right now. Did you guys see that stat? They've allowed 46 points over the last 4 games.
Gosh.
The fewest in the NFL, and they're 0-4. They've been the best defense in the NFL. I mean, by points allowed. It's unbelievable. They're so bad on offense. But Zeke actually has been a relative bright spot, like a star that you can kind of see from a distance here. So yeah, I will actually have Zeke in my top 25 of backs this week, assuming Ramondre Stevenson is out.
Yeah, I agree with you. Could even crack the top 20. Played 69% of the snaps in this game. That is a big time number. 17 carries and 5 targets and 92 yards in the game. I thought most interesting though was I would have, like, when Stevenson went out, my assumption would have been, okay, so Zeke will handle most of the carries and goal line work. Ty Montgomery will be the passing down specialist. He had 1 carry and 0 targets on 3 snaps.
Yep.
So Jermichael Hasty was inactive in this one. I think he'll have a role in this one. I don't know if Zeke's going to play 80% of the snaps, but the fact that he was the primary pass catcher as well in this one gives me some hope for his fantasy stock. But neutral matchup this week coming up against Pittsburgh. I'm with you. Zeke is a guy that's going to be a starter in week 14 lineup.
I am so prepared to get hurt by Jermichael Hasty in week 14. Like either like picking him up in a super deep league, absolutely needing a running back, or like playing against him in some random league like Scott Fishbowl and be like, oh my God, Jermichael Hasty has 4 catches for 36 yards in that game.
Gross.
He's going to catch a long touchdown, right? If you start Zeke,
that's how it's going to work. Yeah. I don't feel good about Zeke on Thursday Night Football. I don't want to play a Patriot on Thursday Night Football if I can help it. But listen, it's one of those situations. Yeah. Exactly. With running back is going to be thin, so you're going to have to make some decisions.
Connor's out. Brian, Washington, Arizona are on bye, so you don't have Connor. You don't have Brian Robinson.
Oh yeah, so stoked. We still have bye weeks when the fantasy playoffs are right at our doorstep.
Dumb.
Anyways, we'll talk about that.
At least it's Arizona and Washington. I mean,
that's true.
It's not like you wanted to start Terry McLaurin anyway, so it's.
I thought he had a bye yesterday.
Stop. Kind of did. 0 catches.
It was brutal.
0 catches for him and Hollywood Brown. And did Chris Godwin have no catches too? I think
he had a touchdown on a run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wide receiver, man.
All right, let's talk about another running back here, Brian Robinson. 7 for 53. They took on the Dolphins, right?
Yep.
7 for 53 before he got hurt. He was basically one of the only bright spots for this Commanders offense before he went out, was replaced by Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez. They kind of split time between them. This was just a tough one because the Dolphins just clearly had command of this game from the jump.
Hey, over the Commanders, no idea the time frame here, and they go into a bye. So it's not like I can tell you should be grabbing Chris Rodriguez this week because he's going to see 15 carries our next game. But if you have super good depth, if you have some flexibility, I should say, Rodriguez probably will end up handling the most carries in that backfield if Robinson misses week 15.
Yeah, maybe they were 7-7 in carries between Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez once Robinson went out. Before those carries for Rodriguez were when they were just running out the clock late. Yeah. So it seemed like Gibson did have a little bit of an edge. He played 30 snaps, Rodriguez 12. Rodriguez had 7 carries, no targets. Gibson in the game at 10 carries and 5 targets. So we know Gibson's going to be the primary pass catcher. That won't change.
Yep.
And I agree. I think the carries will be close. Wouldn't surprise me either way if one or the other led the way. But you're right. It's not a major priority just because they're going into their bye week. But I would not be surprised if Robinson missed a game or two. So if Gibson's out there in a shallow league, would scoop him up. Rodriguez in a deeper league. It's not the worst thing to do with a bench stash right now.
Yeah. At this point, especially if you need somebody. A reminder, though, especially with this team, you said they're on a bye this week, so you won't get them until week 15 as a part of that. Derek Carr also left this game early against the Detroit Lions in the fourth quarter with a right shoulder injury. That did not look great. Did not look fantastic, honestly. Jameis Winston came in as a part of that. Helped be able to get Chris Olave over 100 receiving yards, which was nice. If you see Derek Carr missing any time in this field, how would you, with Jameis and Winston filling in here, how would you look at Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, and these pass catchers?
Did we just rename him Jameson Winston?
Did I do that? It's Jameson Williams and Jameis Winston. It's because they're in the same game. That's my bad.
I got to be honest with you. My confidence goes up in the pass catchers.
Yeah.
Except for Juwan Johnson, who also was on a bye yesterday. He had 0 catches. But yeah, Chris Olave, think back to the time that Derek Carr got hurt prior, and it was like YOLO ball from Jameis Winston. So my confidence goes up just a little bit. But Carr did show us earlier this season he's a fast healer. He left the game with that shoulder injury, ended up missing exactly 0 games.
Yeah.
I hear you, but Winston's efficiency so far, granted, it's a small sample, has been atrocious.
I don't care.
He's completing about half his passes, 5.5 yards per attempt. He's been bad so far.
I'm not starting the chance for a big play is way higher with Jameis Winston.
I guess so, but also playing Carolina, teams run against them. They don't throw. So I don't know if I'm going to be super optimistic. By the way, I do think Carr will miss a game. I do.
Mike is putting on his Stefania hat
so
really
far today.
Brian Robinson might miss a game or two. Derek Carr might miss a game.
I'm just reading tea leaves and,
Yeah.
Well, let Stefania do the heavy lifting on that, but I'm just, here's the thing. I already uploaded projections for next week, an early run. I already sent out our an early look sort of at the projections to our team that writes the blurbs as well. So I have to make educated guesses on this stuff based on the injury and the news and the reports and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just telling you what they're going to
when the teacher forgot to assign homework, you're like, I'm sorry.
Absolutely not. No way.
Miss Bell, do we have homework?
Whoa. Absolutely not. I was going home. I wanted to do sports and write about sports and read the stats from the sports and watch the games and stuff. Way off the mark. I didn't want to do homework. I wanted to do sport. In fact, I would actually I went to college to be a math teacher. Then I switched to journalism. I'm essentially in journalism, and I was a sports editor for the newspaper for 3 years. I hated it because I couldn't write about sports for everything. Like, that's all I care about is sports. So I had to write it. They were like, you have to write about whatever, the economy. I'm like, I don't want to write about
I don't want to write about that.
Writing.
In this economy? Writing about the economy?
Exactly.
No way.
I don't want to write about that's exactly right. So, no, way off on that one.
That's funny. And just to make this clear, Chris Olave, 16 or more fantasy points in 4 straight games, been a top 10 wide receiver over the last month. He's been great. So hopefully we just keep force feeding the ball regardless of who is under center.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about the Dolphins here, because Achane returned in this one, and Tyreek Hill, by the way, went off as well. So when you look at this, first off, Tyreek Hill, do you think he's going to hit 2,000 yards?
Yes.
I think so too.
Yeah, by the way, I did the math on this last night. On pace for 2,098 yards. The record is 1964. He needs to average 96.8 per game in the final 5 games together.
Okay, I am betting on that happening.
I think
also,
so too.
how about this? Would you guys generally agree that the position that we think has the best chance to score the most fantasy points in a given week is quarterback, right? Elite quarterbacks. Yes. Tyreek Hill has 5 games with 30-plus fantasy points this season, including another one yesterday. That is the same number as Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson
Combined.
Yeah.
Wow.
Combined.
Yeah, he's just on another level. It's unreal.
He is. He's the fantasy MVP in my estimation. And I think more so than any time that I can recall in the past decade, the conversation about the most valuable player in the NFL in a real world, Tyreek Hill needs to be involved in it. I understand that Tua has been exceptional as well, and they might sort of take away votes from each other. But Tyreek has been different this year.
Sure has.
Yeah. He's been unbelievable. What do you think about Achane coming back in this one? He looked fantastic. 17 carries, 73 yards, 2 touchdowns.
It's hilarious. Go for it. You want to do it?
Oh, I was just going to say, like, the thing that was most interesting to me was his workload was not limited at all. That was the only concern for me in this first game back. 59% of the snaps, 17 carries, 4 targets.
61, okay.
He had 20 touches in this game, scored 2 more touchdowns. And by the way, there was a touchdown for Raheem Mostert as well in this game. His 4 full games for Achane this season. You already finished in fantasy points? Yeah. Do you have this as well?
I don't have the finishes. I have the numbers, though.
First, 5th, 4th, and 2nd.
Okay,
so go ahead, you take
he's
it from
terrible. I was going to say 22 touches, 233 yards, 4 touchdowns. 51.3 fantasy points, 11 touches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, 27 fantasy points. He slacked this game, 12 touches for 165 yards and a touchdown, only 21.5 fantasy points, and then 20 touches, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns, 25.3 fantasy points.
Yeah, I tweeted that stat line yesterday, and people were like, whoa, down game.
Yeah,
it really was.
It really was a down game.
Unbelievable.
I also think that, like, it may just keep on keeping on. We're so far into this season. There's not that many weeks left for it to fall off the rails. But Raheem Mostert was bailed out by a touchdown yesterday because he now is up to a total of 21 receiving yards over his past 6 games.
It's exactly the stat I have in front of me. So same page. That's a concern. Yeah.
So Mike
touchdown or
asked
bust
the teacher for the homework and also copied off
all the
stats.
That's
right.
Anything else you want to reveal right now?
No, that's all I got.
Okay.
Yeah, you just keep insulting me. Keep bringing it. Bring it. It's all nonsense.
I'm disappointed. At this point, we're all just out on Jeff Wilson Jr. I've been waiting for him to eventually become a thing in this offense, and it's like just not going to happen.
The only reason he'd be on your bench in like a 12-team league is insurance. Just because this offense is so good for running backs. If there's an injury, he could suddenly be a flex option to either guy.
Totally.
Absolutely. Dude, shout out to Raheem Mostert, being a 31-year-old running back who has definitely had some injury histories. He's been fantastic and healthy.
Unreal.
Unreal.
What I thought. I mean,
never.
Imagine the odds you could have gotten that in the offseason.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable.
Think about you just wait. Just don't even draft a running back. Just grab like David Montgomery and Raheem Mostert in like the 8th and 9th round. Think about how good you would feel in fantasy.
Hey, you were on Monty. So.
Well, yeah, but I should have been on Raheem Mostert is who I should have been on.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, all right, we're going to have more of our Week 13 recap coming up in just a moment once we come back from this break. But first, Field, why don't you help us pay some bills?
I'm going to do that right now, Daniels. I tell you about Geico, but I can't find my library. Right here.
My
Here it is.
gosh.
Home, auto, prize, sports, memorabilia. Whatever you need to protect, Geico can help get you covered. And with the award-winning Geico mobile app, you can get 24/7 claim support and on-the-go policy access. It's easy to Geico. Go to geico.com today.
No matter what team you're rooting for, there's one thing we can all agree on. Football season brings us together. A connection like that deserves to be celebrated with a light beer that's just as great, and at just 96 calories a can, Miller Lite is the only light beer you'll want to celebrate with all season long. Because with a Miller Lite in your hand, football doesn't just taste great. It tastes like Miller time. From kickoff till the final whistle, you can't go wrong with a Miller Lite in your hand. It's the only light beer with a taste worthy of our national obsession. Because what's the point of having a beer if it doesn't taste like a beer?
No point.
It's only got 96 calories, 3.2 carbs per 12-ounce serving, with a smooth taste and a crisp, clean finish. You can get the taste you crave without the calories. So this season, Crack open a light beer that hits your taste buds so hard you can feel it in your heart. It might even get you ejected from the game. Make it Miller time all season long. Get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, or visit MillerLite.com/FFF, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 3.2 carbs and 96 calories per 12 ounces. All right, back here on Fantasy Focus, Field Yates, Mike Clay. My name is Daniel Dopp. Making our way through the week 13 recap. We got one last Monday Night Football game, but guys, we're looking at the Sunday games in front of us. And let's talk about the Rams. This one was interesting. I had a lot of reservations about Cooper Kupp coming into this one because we have not seen him look like the Cooper Kupp that we had known coming into the season. Right now, when you look at this, Puka Nacua, another fantastic game. Took a huge play right down the middle, 4 catches, 105 yards and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp, 8 targets, 6 receptions, but only 39 yards and a touchdown. When you look at this offense, like, what's going on here, Fields?
You want to go first, Mike? I'll go first. Let me do the you know what? You do the numbers. I'll give you the what I see when I watch this game.
So, I mean, Nacua, real deal. I mean, the guy just continues to get it done.
Yep.
He had the long touchdown, was beat up in this game, and he had cramps, then he had an injury, kept coming back. My earpiece just keeps popping off, so we're just going to keep going. 6+ targets in all 12 games this season, 7+ in all but one game. You know, we've been kind of up and down on him when Kupp came back, and he had a sort of mini slump in there. You just keep starting this guy. He's a lineup block. He keeps getting it done, including in a tough matchup in this one. 139 yards and a touchdown. 18+ fantasy points in 7 games this season, including 2 of his last 3. So, again, it feels like they're slumping a little bit as an offense, but he keeps getting the job done. So that's him. Cooper Kupp, most targets since week 8 in this one with the 8 you mentioned. First touchdown since week 6, under 50 yards in 6 consecutive games. So I am going to be consistently ranking Nacua ahead of Cooper Kupp going forward.
But the question for me isn't whether you should be ranking Puka Nacua ahead of Cooper Kupp anymore. That part's obvious. Puka Nacua, by the way, is somehow getting faster by the week as well.
Yeah, right?
But maybe the reason why he looks so fast is that when you watch Cooper Kupp right now, looks slow. Looks slow, looks like a guy that's still either dealing with something, or a guy who prescribes to Mike's thoughts on age and was like, I turned 30. Now it's time for me to basically have to retire. It's a shame for a guy that 2 seasons ago was the very best player in fantasy football.
Yep.
We're going to talk about a guy in just a moment who was the best player last year in fantasy football. And Cooper Kupp just feels like he's in a different phase of his career. I hope that this is just the aberration, and that between the preseason hamstring injury and the offseason of light work plus the ankle injury, that all of this just in aggregate has led to Cooper Kupp having a down season, and there's a chance for this to turn back around. Meanwhile, the Rams, of course, do as well, because he now makes $29 million a season, does Cooper Kupp. But when you watch him, feels like a player whose decline has reached, even with a touchdown yesterday. He was saved by that.
It was huge.
15.9 fantasy points for Cooper Kupp. And I'm going to sound dramatic here right now. Felt like a miracle yesterday.
Yeah.
It really did. Just if you watch the offense, it just does not look anywhere near. There are plays that for season upon season with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, I guess 2 seasons together, felt like easy money. If you just called them on every single play, it would work, and they're just gone.
Yeah, I'm already dreading how to rank him next year. Like, if he's back in the same situation, is Kupp washed? Is he over the hill? Is he done? Or is he just not actually healthy this season and he's missing a step, and next year he's going to bounce back? I mean, I'm already dreading that. Let alone the rest of this season.
Not often that happens. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a bummer. He'll probably be a top 25 consideration, maybe top 30 consideration this week when the Rams play the Ravens. That game is all the way back in Baltimore, 1 p.m. kickoff. Yeah. But I hope that Cooper Kupp can prove a lot of people wrong, but it feels like the days of Cooper Kupp being a guy that you counted on to carry your lineup are behind us, at least for the rest of 2023.
Yep. He's not a lineup lock, right? At this point, it's okay to say if I've got another wide receiver that's just playing better than him, then I can consider
with
it.
Some guys that have been rising up recently, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think a 12-team leagues probably still is. I'm with you. They're going to have to throw plenty in this game, and the offense has been okay, so I'll still probably have him borderline top 25, and you're probably starting him most of the time.
But again, the offense has been okay. It's been more than okay. It's been good, right? It's been good in spite of Cooper Kupp's struggles for a player that 2 seasons ago was the best player in fantasy football on a per game basis since Jerry Rice, 28 years ago.
Yeah,
or more than that, 38 years ago.
I'm with you, but when you have, we know his ceiling. We know that he had 8 targets again in this game, and his target share has been really good. And it's an average scoring offense. Like you put all those together objectively, just for like an average player, and you're like, yeah, it's probably like a wide receiver.
Close.
Or flex,
it's close. Yeah, it's close. It's just been disappointing.
Yeah, what's hard is when you draft a guy as a first rounder, and all of a sudden he's now ranked as wide receiver 25. You're like, well, it feels twice as bad as what it normally does.
So I didn't draft Cooper Kupp in any leagues in the first round because we do most of our drafts later on in the preseason.
Yeah.
Yes.
But would he be the biggest bust amongst players that were generally taken in round 1 when you think about it now?
If he was not to,
like if you got him in that first round value, that's the biggest bust, right?
Not including injuries, because the injury part is tough, right?
I don't know, but amongst the injury guys, like who?
So Nick Chubb, like I think that was a tough one.
He was close.
He was a fringe guy.
That's fair.
I mean, Jefferson was the first overall pick, and he's missed a huge chunk, but he was great before that. Yeah. So
all right, let's talk about Anyway, it's frustrating. It stinks.
But we talked about like the Rams have basically been good almost in spite of Cooper Kupp. Puka has been awesome, and Kyren Williams coming back a second straight game that he looks like a legit RB1 that needs to not leave your fantasy
He's getting
lineup.
Goal line work. He's getting passing game utilization. He's an easy set it and forget it top 10 running back. He's been a top 10 running back in 6 of 8 games played so far this season. There's really no analysis needed for Kyren Williams other than you should be playing him.
You got to play him.
So I want to talk about the other running back in Los Angeles, Austin Ekeler. And Austin Ekeler continues to really, really struggle. Mike and I had a bit of a conversation about him last week, and I was like, God, he's been disappointing. And you pointed out, like, the volume is still good and the workload is still pretty good for a guy that, plays a position where you want that workload. He has back-to-back games with 9.7 or fewer fantasy points. Austin Ekeler, 14 carries for 18 yards yesterday. I know it's hard to see through that terrible offense. The Patriots defense, though, is pretty good, but still, 14 for 18 for Austin Ekeler for a guy that was being drafted in the top 5 in many drafts. The passing game utilization is completely different than where it was last season, under 8 fantasy points per game as a receiver this year for Austin Ekeler. The touchdowns are hard to come by. This is a guy who, when his team this offseason made a bet that he was not going to be this elite player, they did not want to pay him huge money in a contract year. Maybe they made the right bet on Austin Ekeler.
I hear you. A lot of what you just laid out is totally fair. He's been in a slump here. The one thing I'll give him I'll give you 2 reasons for hope. One is before this 3-game slump, he was a top 6 scorer at running back 3 consecutive weeks. So we have a 3-game sample. It's not a lot. Obviously, it's concerning. The other is they're playing Denver this week. Now, Denver's coming off a decent run defense week, but they have allowed the most fantasy points to running backs this season. And even if you cross out that Miami game, it's not good. Like, they've allowed a ton of big running back games. So I'm still going to rank him pretty high this week. I think there's a chance that he gets back on track in this game. This was,
I'll be lower.
You're going to be a little
outside
lower?
the top 10, you think? Or
Yeah.
not? Okay.
All right.
Outside the top 15, you think?
I think of it this way, and I get it. Mike mentioned how prior to this 3-game slump, he had been very, very good for fantasy purposes. When I'm doing my rankings every week, I was thinking about this on the drive into work, is that really what I'm ranking the players as is who has the greatest chance to reach 20 fantasy points this week at their respective position. 20 is sort of an arbitrary, like a pretty darn good fantasy day at every position, right? Great at tight ends. I mean, good for quarterbacks and really good for running backs and wide receivers. And it just feels like right now, Austin Ekeler is not that dude that is going to provide you as much upside as guys like we just talked about in Kyren Williams and Tony Pollard trending up and Alvin Kamara and his running back, his passing game utilization and the 2 Lions running backs, Rashad White, even with all the work he is getting. There just feels like there are better options. And I'm not talking about the CMCs of the world that are right there in plain sight for us to be ahead of Austin Ekeler in my week 14 ranks.
And it's incredible. His snap participation, share of the carries, route participation, all up from last year. Target share down a little bit, but it's really the touchdowns just haven't been there. He's had a couple duds, obviously. 6-0 game.
Too.
I mean, no doubt, it's down for sure.
That game set back offense yesterday, by the way.
6-0 was just disgusting.
I was going to say the Dodgers take care of the Red Sox 6-0 and the Sunday getaway game.
What is going on this season?
Well, that was one of the games where if you were watching Red Zone, you're like, did they even play that game? I swear they never even cut to it.
Over the past decade, like offense is just like touchdowns per game going up, and then like the last 2 years,
it's just like straight back down.
Meanwhile, like Iowa was like, oh my God, those guys are electric on offense. All right, that was mean. Sorry, that was mean. I do love Iowa though.
Oh man.
How about where we're at right now? Though you're going to have Austin Ekeler ranked probably as low as you've had him all year. You're going to have Cooper Kupp outside the top 25. This is where we're at right now, man.
We have some board bet potential with Ekeler this week.
Yes, wait already.
We will talk.
Yep. All right, back here on Fantasy Focus, Field Yates, Mike Clay. My name is Daniel Dopp, making our way through our Week 13 recap, and we are diving into the Texans. We unfortunately saved one of these injuries. We did not talk about it off the top of the show. Tank Dell unfortunately got pinned under a pile and fractured his fibula, and on a part of a scoring play where he was just blocking. Ended up going to go on IR, going to be season ending for Tank, which is so frustrating because this is a rookie that came on and has just absolutely blown the roof off the doors, to use an old phrase from the show. Field, I don't know what you say about Tank Dell other than, like, let's just give him some props on how great his rookie season has been.
Third-round pick who played like anything but it. The future is bright for Houston right now. I mean, the present's bright right now as well. They're 7-5. Can you believe that they are now tied with the Cleveland Browns? When they made that trade up last year, it was like, wow, they traded their own pick and not the Browns pick. They may end up having a better record, hence an inferior pick that they have traded. So a brilliant move by the Texans all the way around. I mean, in their entire young core, it's C.J. Stroud, it's Tank Dell, it's Will Anderson, it's Derek Stingley, all of a sudden has 4 interceptions in his past 3 games. The present and the future is very bright, but we hate to see it for Tank Dell because he had come on like a freight train over the past month, and all of a sudden means that the Houston Texans are going to be relying upon other wide receivers, and Nico Collins stepped up in a major way yesterday, 191 receiving yards and a touchdown. And you would have thought that with Tank Dell out, well, somebody else could feast. No Dalton Schultz out available as well. And instead, it was the Nico Collins by himself show, Mike. And people are wondering, well, was Noah Brown like eased back into action after a knee injury? 81% of the snaps, the exact same number of snaps as Nico Collins. Noah Brown was out there a bunch, but it was the Nico Collins show. But without Tank Dell, at least it introduces the possibility of somebody besides Collins having a fantasy relevant
And we've
role.
seen that all year long. I think this was kind of fluky in that regard. They just had a good matchup with Collins. They kept forcing him the football, and it worked great for them. But, I think going forward, Collins is going to be a fringe wide receiver 1. He's kind of provided that value all season long, and now he's the clear, obvious number 1 on the perimeter in this offense. And then I think Noah Brown's next up. He's had a couple huge games. He's had at least 4 targets in every other game he's played this season. So the 2 in this one, kind of fluky. He'll be probably in the flex right there going forward. Robert Wood just has no ceiling. We've seen that all year, and his targets are going down.
For 20 points. Yeah, who has a better chance for 20 points? Robert Woods or Noah Brown?
Noah Brown for sure. So the one thing I will say, though, is this week specifically, they're playing the New York Jets. Obviously a tough situation on the perimeter against those guys. So a tough matchup for Collins, but even with the downgrade, we're going to start him.
Yeah, absolutely. And C.J. Stroud, unfortunately, in this one, only 274 yards and a touchdown. 6 carries, though. I'll tell you what, Field, you had talked about this. One of the things you wanted to see a little bit more from C.J. Stroud was just him utilizing his legs. 6 carries, only 11 yards, but the idea that you get any type of rushing involvement is I'd like to see him maybe do that a little bit more.
He had 16.1 fantasy points, so not going to help your cause that much in the board bet against Pulsifer against Patrick. Oh, wait, never mind. We'll talk about Mahomes later. And he was even more inferior than that.
Yeah, not great. Only 16
You know what's interesting about Stroud is only 2 top 5 finishes this season in fantasy points. He's been in the 8 to 13 range 6 times, 16th or worse 4 times. So he's just been like your prototypical fringe streamer QB1, like a back end QB1. And so that's going to, like, you have to consider the matchup with him a little bit. It's hard to bench. It's just hard to believe he only has 2 top 5s. Like, he's had that ceiling, and they're playing the Jets this week. So this is a tough spot for him coming off a game where he was, he's currently QB 12 with 6 teams on a bye.
God, I can't believe this Patrick Mahomes thing.
It's talk about it more, right?
But it's still fuming about that. We're not even there yet.
C.J. Stroud coming into this game had 4 straight games with over 300 passing yards, so he just needs to be able to get in the end zone as a part of it, or utilize his legs because he's getting a ton of volume from that game. Takes on the Jets this week, so that's going to be a tough one. Let's move ahead and talk about the Colts here. We had no Jonathan Taylor in this one.
I think Field's already angry enough. Are we sure you want to talk about this?
Sure you want to do this?
Yeah, Mike tried to bully me last week. I had him as RB12, and I was like, Mike, I'm just not totally convinced that Zach Moss is like this super duper star player. And he was like, really? Well,
how dare you,
I've got him as RB6 because he's going to ball out.
How'd that turn out?
Mike, you want to tell him?
I have no regrets on this one.
No regrets.
And here's why. Here's the number, 94. 94% of the snaps. If I told you that last week, I'm from the future, Field, and the only thing I know is that Zach Moss will play 94% of the snaps in this game, you'd have been like, moving him up to like RB5.
Field, hold on. Field, if I told you I'm from the future and I said snaps count for fantasy points, would you be really excited about it?
So what do you chase then? I hate that. I hate when you guys are like air yards and that's how we predict what happens in the future.
Right. That is true.
Chase points, you're going to lose in fantasy football.
Chasing volume.
19 carries, 3 targets. Yes, the production was not good. He's played 75+% of the snaps in the first 4 games earlier this season at 20+ fantasy points in 3 of the 4. He had a game like this against the Rams where he only had 9 points. So I think it's fluky. I think it's fluky. He had a game like this during that stretch earlier this season. Otherwise, he's had huge games this season. I'm sticking with him. I still think he's a mid-range RB1. I mean, the usage was terrific.
All right, fair enough. Stand by your no. I admit. I mean, I had him as RB12, so I was only 6 spots lower than Mike. My concerns were simply that while Zach Moss is a good player, I was not convinced he was totally an elite player. And the production yesterday was more reflective of a good player than an elite player. But the role is elite, and he will remain elite in terms of utilization next week with Jonathan Taylor likely to be out. I picked up Trey Sermon as an insurance ad in a deep league just in case he had some sort of role. He played like 3 snaps yesterday.
Yeah, he was out-snapped by, and I'm totally spacing right now.
The guy they activated from the practice squad. Yeah, the running back.
Tyler Goodson.
That's it. Tyler Goodson was second in line, so I suspect that'll be the case again this week.
How about I don't really know what to say about this, but Michael Pittman had 16 targets yesterday. How good has Michael Pittman been?
Can we just have an appreciation for Michael Pittman here?
Yeah, he's been awesome.
I was listening to the Hoop Collective, the great NBA podcast, Brian Windhorst, Tim McMahon, Tim Bontemps. Wendy has a group of guests that always come through, and he was talking about this recently and how like what we tend to do in stories is we either harp on the negative or we harp on the new. Michael Pittman has just been unbelievable all season. He now has the most catches by any Colt in franchise history through the player's first 4 seasons. He obviously still has more time left in his current 4th season. He has at least 8 catches in 5 straight games. The guy is an absolute volume machine right now. Found the end zone for the 3rd time yesterday as well. If this guy's not the definition of a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football, I don't know what he is.
Yeah, he's been awesome. I mean, anytime someone's named Michael Jr., you can trust him. That's it.
That's interesting. I didn't have that in my notes. Did you just?
That's analytics.
That's
at
what
its
that
core.
is. Yeah.
Right there.
See, here's the thing. Daniel and I, we get caught up when we give you flack on air yards. And then meanwhile, you say we need to be worried about Michael Jr.
Yes.
That kind of analysis?
No, you need to love people named Michael Jr. and be nice to them.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Yeah. He's been unbelievable, though. And just by the way, this is not fluky. This is not just like a guy getting force-fed the ball. Like just a stone-cold star is Michael Pittman Jr., top 10 wide receiver right now in fantasy. Lineup block every single week. Love watching him play. One of the most comforting feelings right now in fantasy football is having Michael Pittman Jr. in your lineup.
No doubt.
Michael Pittman Jr. has 8 games with at least 11 or more targets.
It's absurd.
Which is crazy. I would not have guessed that coming into the season. If you used a draft pick on him, in spite of all the things that you had any reservations, it has worked out, and you have been so unbelievably thrilled with this.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what this offense looks like, honestly, once they get Anthony Richardson back under center and see how things look with this Colts team. There's a lot to be looking forward to.
And maybe less pass volume, but they're a fast-paced offense.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen that, and it's going to be perhaps more productive, more touchdowns. And also, we've seen this with or without Richardson. Huge target share for Pittman. So I'm not really worried. He should be in a good spot.
Shane Steichen, you earned everybody's respect. You have been outstanding as the Colts head coach this season. He has been such a fun coach to watch in terms of how fast they are playing. As Mike pointed out, they've been aggressive in key spots, making the most of his best players. They've gotten work out of Alec Pierce. He was great yesterday as well. Alec Pierce, an absolute drop in the bucket throw by Gardner Minshew in overtime to lead to that eventual Michael Pittman Jr. touchdown. Fun to watch this Colts team doing it, of course, with Jonathan Taylor in and out of the lineup. No Anthony Richardson. Recently parting ways with Shaq Leonard, and with an owner who's been like crazy at various times throughout the season.
There's been a lot.
Pretty impressive that they have ridden the wave. Ridden the wave? Whatever.
Righted.
They've survived the wave.
Yes.
And now 7-5, very much in the AFC playoff.
If they had one win, we'd be like, well, they lost Richardson. Like, it's fine. They're rebuilding. It's understandable.
Yeah.
They lost their starting quarterback, and they're a contender.
Impressive.
I mean, they've done a nice job.
They've been crushing it. All right, back here on Fantasy Focus. Field Yates, Mike Clay. My name is Daniel Dopp, making our way through our Week 13 recap, and we have got the game of the week, 49ers and Eagles.
Mike, this would be a good time for you to go get your earpiece fixed.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm not fixing it, by the way, so I can't hear anything.
Okay,
I'm just hanging out here. It keeps breaking, kind of like
a stop sign prior to our last segment.
It's kind of I just threw it away at this point. It's broken, kind of like the Eagles were yesterday. That was ugly. That was rough. That was a hard one to watch. There was a lot going on leading into this game since the NFC Championship last year. A lot of we'll call it whining by the 49ers, but guess what? They backed it up for sure. What else can you say? I mean, you got to give them props. They crushed the Eagles. They dismantled them. There's no, you could pick it apart and say this happened or that happened or this penalty. It doesn't matter. I mean, everything could have went the Eagles' way. They still would have lost this game. So, hey, credit where credit's deserved, where it's deserved. And I'm hoping there's a rematch in the playoffs and the Eagles, it goes the other direction. But Niners, best team in the league.
Okay. Wow. Bold statement right there.
Well, you disagree? Who's better?
Well, I mean, the Eagles have a better record, so doesn't that mean they're a better team?
No,
I don't think so.
That's results-based analysis.
I'm just kidding, Michael. I'm just kidding. You guys lost by 23 points yesterday.
Yeah.
No, I would say the 49ers are the most complete team. Yes.
Yeah. They look great.
Maybe the Packers with the way they're playing right now.
Stop it. Let's talk about the 49ers here.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's kind of go through this because I'm not sure that last night introduced like a bunch of new dynamics to fantasy, kind of just like taking stock of where we're at with these players, right?
Yeah, I will say that I don't think this is new dynamic, Field, but I want to mention this because you said it on Fantasy Football Now.
Yeah.
Last couple of weeks, we've been wondering if Brock Purdy has made the change from being a streamer to someone that you can trust on a top 10, like you can start him here. And on Fantasy Football Now, you talked about it this week saying, I think Purdy has sort of made the change. He's become a guy that you can trust if you need to start him this week, and he totally paid off. 29.46 fantasy points. Is this just a thing because it was the Eagles' defense, or do you think with the way that this 49ers offense is going, that Brock Purdy is just a potential top 10 quarterback the rest of the way?
He's got 20-plus fantasy points in 3 of the past 4 games. He's a really good player, and I know
awesome
that there is like people are going to always parse out how many yards of his passing yards are yards after the catch. Who cares? Yeah. We don't like find a way to delineate between yak and total yards in fantasy football. If he throws it 2 yards and Deebo Samuel takes it 52 yards for a touchdown, you still get the credit for that. So the opportunities for big plays are different for Brock Purdy than they are for any other quarterback in the NFL. He is a lock-it-in starting quarterback.
Yeah, by the way, you did say 3 of his last 4 he is 20-plus, and he's done that 6 times this season. The one exception over the past month against Seattle, that's who they played this week. So I'll probably rank him a little bit lower, but still in the top 10. I mean, I think you'd have a hard time benching him.
Kind of a fluky game when they played Seattle, too, with the pick 6 against him. Like,
fair enough.
Just a weird game. Yeah,
not a lot of pass volume either. You see his pass attempts, 27 in this game. Still had 314 and 4 touchdowns. Their efficiency offensively is unbelievable. Just Kyle Shanahan is something else.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey did Christian McCaffrey stuff again. Over 130 total yards, plus a touchdown, plus he got 4 targets, 3 receptions. So he just keeps being Christian McCaffrey. Really, the conversation here was these wide receivers.
Can we just talk about this here for a second? So Daniel and I had the Deebo versus Brandon Aiyuk board bet at the beginning of the season, which is very, very, very close. Mike, you want to remind us how close it is?
So I looked this up last week because I was looking at, or last night, I was looking through the leaderboard. I was like, well, they're right next to each other suddenly because you have Aiyuk, you have Deebo, and it looked like Aiyuk was going to run away with it. They're right next to each other now. It's 16.2 for Aiyuk, 15.5 for Deebo Samuel. So this is going to come down to the wire, perhaps.
But it will come down to the wire. That, of course, includes a game in which Deebo started it and then left very early.
Call.
So if you take that away,
if we just start taking games out.
That's how you want to win.
Got hurt, right?
Can I start taking away Brandon Aiyuk games where he got hurt?
He didn't get hurt this year, so sure.
That's right. Heaven forbid I drafted a guy that didn't get hurt. I should get penalized.
You can project injuries now? Is that what we're saying?
Wow. You guys are both defying it.
Yeah, what's going on?
Meanwhile, though, the incredible part about Deebo's day yesterday was he did this 35.8 fantasy point outing on 7 total touches. He had 3 rushes for 22 yards and a touchdown, 4 catches for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, the reality is if you're choosing between Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk, you got a high society problem in your lineup. Yeah. It's great to play both of them. Obviously, they're going to have some down days. Aiyuk has been the steadier ship so far this season, but Deebo's upside is still about as great as there is for any wide receiver in all of fantasy.
Totally with you.
Would you believe that Deebo has 4 or fewer targets in 6 of his last 7 games?
It's crazy.
But he's getting carries and he's getting the big plays, and this offense is scoring touchdowns at will. So
the Eagles just didn't want to tackle him on that 48-yard touchdown. It's like he caught it and just ran in between everybody. It was a very strange play.
Yeah. Ugly defensive effort.
Mike's going to have an interesting meeting with the boys this week in the locker room, talking about the effort in general, about things that can be better.
Special teams is fine for Philly, I think. Right? Michael Clay, special teams coordinator.
George Kittle looked fine. I mean, this is part of how it works when someone's going to go off. He still had a fine day, though, 10.8 fantasy points. And at tight end, 10.8 fantasy points.
That's like tight end 3.
Yeah, exactly.
He finished his top 8, then that's top 8, 5 of the last 6 games.
There you go.
Just getting the job done.
Yeah.
When you look at these Eagles, Mike, obviously Jalen Hurts continues to be Jalen Hurts. Got in the end zone with a tush push. Only the 6th player this year to score a rushing touchdown against the San Francisco 49ers. Jalen Hurts was.
He was bad yesterday, and he had 23.9 fantasy points. QB4. And I think that will probably be at worst QB5 by the end of the week. He's just absurd. He's really absurd.
Yeah, not much to add. Same old.
Well, he did leave the game briefly. He was evaluated for concussion, came back into the game. So, as we know, there are times where players report symptoms after the fact, so we'll monitor whether anything of that nature pops up with Jalen Hurts. But he did return to the game. That does tend to be a positive sign. Meanwhile, DeVonta Smith is on a heater right now.
He looks so good.
DeVonta Smith's last 5 games have been ridiculous. Let me get the exact numbers. I've dropped all my sheets. I think I'm going to find
Well, you do that. 5 straight top 20 finishes, 8+ targets in 3 straight.
Yep.
He did average 6.8 per game with Dallas Goedert, who we suspect may return next week. So could see a little bit of a dip in volume with Smith moving forward. Also playing against the Cowboys, who they played in Week 9. He had 3 for 51 in that game on only 3 targets to score a touchdown. So that's a minor concern, but go ahead, take it from there.
799 in the touchdown, 351 in the touchdown, 6 for 99, 7 for 106 in the touchdown, 9 for 96 in a touchdown over his past 5 games. How good is that guy?
Yeah,
he's awesome.
Been great.
Yep. Yeah. And AJ Brown, by the way, had a quiet day with only 114 receiving yards.
What else to do? That guy is on another level.
Yeah, he is.
I was thinking about this too. Drive in. The Titans, it's almost unfair to evaluate Will Levis. Imagine if he had AJ Brown he could throw the ball to. I mean, I know he has DeAndre Hopkins, but give him more.
You can't hear this right now. Our producer, Dave Presley, is a great guy and a great Titans fan, is so enraged right now. You can't hear it because your earpiece just popped out, but he is like, That's why
I broke it.
What are you doing? Yeah, that's smart. Yeah.
Titans got to figure something out. You already know I'm on that AJ Brown.
Yeah, I know that's your thing. Yeah,
that is a thing. But honestly, both of these wide receivers look fantastic. You're starting both of them. The only thing that didn't look good from a fantasy perspective. The only thing that didn't look good for the Eagles was the running backs. They were just awful. Could not run the ball at all. I think you had 20 total rushing yards from all of your running backs combined.
Yeah, 8 touches, 20 yards for DeAndre Swift, but he did have 6 targets. It's his most since week 6. So I was pointing in the direction, in the right direction. Game script obviously played a bit into that. His prior 2 games, 15 touches and 84+ yards. Really tough matchup against the Cowboys this week. Only 74 yards when they played in week 10, but had 20 touches. I mean, Swift has fallen kind of out of that solid RB1. He kind of got in there, right? Where we rank him as an RB1. I think he's more of a RB2 right now, mostly because of matchup. So it's gonna be a grind for this offense the next couple of weeks before it lightens up down the stretch.
So just a reminder, Daniel, because you were gone this past week, Stefania and Mike made a wager on this game, and the wager was if the Eagles win, Stefania had to buy Mike dinner.
Yep.
If the 49ers won, Mike had to buy Stefania dinner with one caveat.
Ouch.
If the game was separated by at least 20 points, they had to buy, each one of them had to buy you and I dinner.
Oh, I love that.
It was a blowout,
that's nice.
I missed that part. I was in a bit of a haze yesterday, so maybe I missed
as always, people, Mike not reading the fine print, not paying attention to the details. Part. Yeah, so Mike and Stefania will be treating Daniel and I to a lovely steak dinner restaurant of our choice.
Are you sure you want dinner from me, or can I hire Tyler to handle this?
Ooh. No, you're just going to pay for it. You're not going to cook it.
Also, because it's a Stefania dinner, you're going to need to bring your pocketbook. So I am ready for this one.
Look, I like food and wine too. I'm in. Let's go.
All right, let's keep things moving here with our Week 13 recap. Talking about this Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. Mike Evans. Boy, 12 targets, 7 carries, 162 receiving yards, and a touchdown, good enough for 29.2 fantasy points.
Let's do it.
That was the biggest game that he has had all season long.
Okay, that might be the biggest game, but it's not like he hasn't been awesome this year. And again, kind of what we were talking about with Michael Pittman Jr. Sometimes you just need a moment to just appreciate. And Mike Evans, the only player in NFL history with 10 straight 1,000 receiving yard seasons to begin his career.
So good.
He extended his own record yesterday. He's now 1 shy of the record regardless of when it happened. That was Jerry Rice with 11 straight. And how about this? 12 games played. At least 8 targets in 9 of 12. Oof. At least 1 touchdown in 9 of 12. Wow. At least 6 catches and 60 yards in 7 of 12 games. At least 17 fantasy points in 7 of 12 games. For a guy who went from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield, you would not expect him to all of a sudden become Mr. Reliable when he was Mr. Volatile a season ago. That's exactly what has happened with Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think one of my big lessons, and we'll talk about this in the offseason, one of my big lessons or takeaways from this season is to not throw in the towel on superstars. You know, again, how many times do we have this conversation in the offseason, should we be targeting Evans and Godwin the same way we were?
DK
and Tyler exactly. We had that conversation. We still I have some Evans on my teams. We followed through with that with our drafting to an extent, but we should have had him even higher. We just that he was coming off kind of a down year to his standards, and went from Brady to Baker Mayfield. And the target share's up, the production's up. He just has it. This guy and superstars just keep up their production longer than regular players. He's not a regular player. So absolutely hats off to Mike Evans. He's been terrific.
Yeah, him and Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's another guy. I know we talked about him earlier, but like in that same boat that I feel like we just sort of dismissed this year in draft season. It wasn't just Mike Evans, though. Do you want to talk about Chris Godwin Field, who just unfortunately did not do a whole lot?
How about this? When was the last time that Chris Evans had double-digit fantasy points in a game? Chris Godwin, excuse me.
I don't think Chris Evans has ever had 20 double-digit fantasy
Captain
points
America. In a game. When was the last time that Chris Godwin had double-digit fantasy points in a fantasy game?
I don't know, I'll say 5 weeks ago.
October 26th. Over a month ago.
Yikes. So, about
5 weeks ago.
That's not what you're
crazy
for
Chris Godwin, who is obviously a very, very talented player, but unlike DK and Tyler Lockett, both thriving last year with Geno Smith, it's almost like Mike Evans' burst has come at the cost of Chris Godwin. Yeah. It's not as simple as that, but we haven't had both of them thrive.
Yeah, not to mention Rashad White has been heavily involved and productive. And also, they seem to have found something perhaps in Trey Palmer, who's kind of pushing them for snaps and volume as well. The target share for him has been pretty solid as well.
Phil, I want to ask you, when the Panthers signed Miles Sanders this offseason.
Right, it was supposed to work.
Was there a caveat in there that they could transfer that money to a different running back that maybe plays better for their team?
Right, like on Tuesday when Miles Sanders gets a direct deposit, does he just go to like Chuba Hubbard and be like, how much you want my Venmo?
So that's exactly, yes.
Is it split by share of the snaps that way?
It should be. But Chuba Hubbard has back-to-back games with 20-plus fantasy points. Now, here's what I think is important, is that these two games have come in very different ways. Last week, it was 5 catches for 47 yards, which really helped him get to that 20-plus fantasy point threshold.
Yep.
Yesterday, it was 25 carries for 104 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 targets.
0.
What I will say, though, if you're looking for some reasons to believe that Chuba can remain a thing going forward, is that one of the biggest deterrents to the Panthers running backs earlier on in the season was that they're always playing from behind, and if they're not getting steady passing game utilization, can you really trust them? Mm-hmm. Their upcoming schedule, not so difficult the rest of the way. At New Orleans, home to Atlanta, I have no idea what to make of either of those teams. They play a lot of division games in their last 5, including the Bucs once again in Week 18. Maybe Chuba can kind of hang around on that top 25-ish running back radar.
Yeah, and I think he will. I mean, this was his first ever game with 2 touchdowns, and this is not an offense. Even if it's close, it's going to score a lot of touchdowns. Yeah. And usually if they're going to score on average, like probably a little less than 2, let's say they're going to score 2 touchdowns a game. One's probably going to be a pass.
Yeah.
There's just not going to be a high ceiling touchdown-wise.
Didn't I see that like yesterday was like, how many games has Bryce Young not thrown a touchdown pass this season? A lot.
That's probably a
lot. Yeah, feels like it at least.
Fair enough. I mean, but still, I mean, if you're the odds say generally it's going to be above more than 50% of your touchdowns are going to be passing. That's the case for like 30 out of 32 teams. Yeah. You know, so nonetheless, there could be some passing touchdowns. There's not a lot of touchdown upside. But the fact is, if he keeps handling 2/3 of the backfield volume, he's at least going to be a flex, maybe an RB2. It's just hard to have a lot of optimism in a low-scoring, low-productive offense.
Yeah, they're no Packers. That's for sure.
That's true. That's true. Let's talk about these Green Bay Packers because we got a guy in Jordan Love field. I think he's trying to prove you and me wrong specifically. It feels personal at this point.
I've already started to I've already made amends on a couple of different occasions. And I think that I don't know why people think that when you have a take that it's sticky and it has to forever stay exactly what it was. And I admit, I thought that Jordan Love at the beginning of the season was very shaky.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
By the way,
actually true.
I think a lot of Packers fans feel that way as well. And Jordan Love has proved me very, very wrong. He has been outstanding over the past 3 games. He has 20-plus fantasy points in each of those last 3 games. He has 8 touchdowns. He has 0 interceptions. He's completed about 68% of his passes over those past 3 games. And if you just watch the Packers, you say to yourself, this is not just a developing offense. This is a legitimate offense with a ton of young talent. There are a few teams that have impressed me more from the start of the season to where they are right now than the Green Bay Packers. I take my hat off to Matt LaFleur, the entire offensive staff, Jordan Love, the patience of the front office and this roster in general. Last night was a real deal win against a Chiefs team that Mike had told us had allowed just one 20-plus fantasy point game to opposing quarterbacks this season, 23.68. For Jordan Love last night.
I like something you said there, which is that it was legit. I mean, this wasn't a fluke win. They handled this one throughout. This was a legit win over the Kansas City Chiefs. I will add this kind of interesting. Love started the game with 3 20-plus point games. He has his last 3 20-plus point games bookended by 7 straight under 18 points. So it's kind of interesting how he's fluctuated in that department. But 4th among quarterbacks with 22 passing touchdowns. 10th at quarterback in rushing yards as well. Not a huge number, but still, like, it's enough to help add your floor a little bit. So playing the Giants this week, it's a game they should be able to run the football. But he's definitely a fringe, maybe a back-end QB1, kind of in that conversation.
By the way, part of a Monday Night Football doubleheader next week.
That's right.
Same time, but 2 games on Monday Night Football as you have the Packers and the Giants, plus the Titans and the Dolphins. And, obviously we have to use the numbers, and obviously we have to use the trends positively, negatively. But just, again, when you watch Jordan Love's 3 straight games with 20-plus fantasy points, and you ask me, is the formula that he's been leaning on over the past 3 weeks replicable going forward? The answer is yes.
Agreed.
At the beginning of the season, when 6 of his first 29 completions went for touchdown passes, I was telling you, that is not sustainable. And believe it or not, it is not sustainable. He has been throwing the ball a whole lot more over the past 3 weeks and not turning them into 20% of his passes going to touchdown passes, but he's been a whole lot better as a player. So I know that this is not the world that we live in anymore. We live in a world where every weekend is, sort of like the definitive stance on a player or a team. But the Packers have reminded us it's a long season. Football is probably the sport where you practice the least, especially because of how the CBA now structures the NFL offseason. Sometimes it takes time for guys to get better, especially when you have the youngest team in the NFL. His wide receiver core right now is led by a veteran in Christian Watson, who's played like 19 career games.
Second year.
He's the elder statesman in this room.
They said that with A.J. Dillon. Like, A.J. Dillon being 25.9 years old is like the old guy right now on this offense.
Dude, look at their offense. Name one old guy on their offense right now.
Not including the offensive line. Because the
offensive line
like
is
25.
young too. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, with David Bakhtiari now out for the rest of the season, I think Elton Jenkins might be the most
oldest
experienced player on the entire team.
It was funny. A.J. Dillon had a quote about how, like, he hears he thinks he's young, and then he hears the younger players talking, and he's like, "Oh, I feel old now." Do you think they're saying like yeeted?
Yes.
They're saying like, "Oh, that guy got yeeted," and he's like, "Oh, I'm so old."
Dillon got yeeted again. But also not to be overlooked in this ascension of Jordan Love is that Christian Watson
Never
looks
in
like
doubt.
himself.
Never doubted you, Christian.
He was not shadow last night.
He was not. Romeo Dobbs drew the L'Jarius Sneed shadow. It must have been just a matchup.
We talked about that last week, wondering whether that was like a long, linear wide receiver they wouldn't do it to. They did not, and Watson balled out. 2 touchdowns last night. He did leave the game late with a hamstring injury.
That could be.
We have no idea on that one, but obviously with the extra day, you're hoping that helps. But Christian Watson has returned to form. So if you kind of found your way through the first 10 weeks of the season, he's now has back-to-back games with a touchdown, including 2 last night.
Let me ask you this question. In week 14, are you starting Christian Watson or Cooper Kupp at the wide receiver
Christian
position?
Watson, who has a better chance for 20 fantasy points. Assuming he plays as Christian Watson.
Yeah, I think it's close.
You're supposed to be the president of the fan club.
I am, but I mean, it was.
He's hedging here.
I guess I'm like still in this kind of mode of like he's hurt, So I'm just now I'm
If
kind of thinking about it.
Assuming he plays, that's who I play.
I think it's a close call. I think it's a close call.
I don't. I know Watson's I can't wait to be the first person to have a board bet against Mike Clay in which Mike is picking the opposite of the Watson side. This is going to be great.
I'm hedging on my preseason call. I assume Watson's not. I don't even know what it was, but I know I had Watson in something. I wish it just started right now or 2 weeks ago. It's funny. Love's gotten rolling lately when that has coincided with Watson getting rolling, getting heated up.
Certainly helps. Last thing in this game is we have to talk about Patrick Mahomes again, guys.
Yeah.
We just have to.
Every week.
And, it just like, I don't know. I was thinking about this on the ride in this morning, as always. Fantasy disappointments this year. Where does he rank?
Almost at the top of the list.
He's near the top. He's top 5. I have a hard time, going quarterback in that generally.
I hear you.
Yeah, but
totally
he's definitely in that conversation.
Really?
And, because we don't draft them in the first round. Usually the second round. It's like usually fantasy disappointments are going to be like led by first round picks.
So I think about that a little differently than you because I realize that we don't do it, but I still think a lot of the industry does it. And because of that, I think there's a part of me that when I see ADP says that he is
I think a lot of the people that play fantasy football do it. His ADP was like 15 on ESPN. Exactly. So he was going in the middle of the first round in the second round of a 10-team league. So it's not a Mahomes thing, right? He's not become he's not no longer the best player on the planet. Okay. The guy's unbelievable. But this offense is just wretched right now, and they have no consistent playmakers other than Travis Kelce and a running back in Isaiah Pacheco. There's nobody in the receiving core that you can totally implicitly trust. Rashee Rice was good again last night.
Yeah.
8 catches on 9 targets, but still, like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, dang, like Sky Moore, not a whole lot there. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, not a whole lot there. Kadarius Toney,
Justin Watson leading in snaps.
Watson, right? Yeah. Like, it's just this Chiefs team is a defensive team. And all of a sudden last night, the defense had no answer for the youngest offense in the NFL.
By the way, the Chiefs were like, well, we don't like what's going on with MVS, just kind of like the all-cardio team. Yeah. So they were like, you know what, we need 2 MVSs. So now Justin Watson leads the team in snaps and had 0 targets in this game.
Crazy.
Not to mention Sky Moore, who barely touches it, but Rashee Rice do it 2 straight games with huge target shares.
That part's good, yes.
Yeah, he needs to be in lineups, no doubt about it.
But just 210 yards and a touchdown, like, God, like.
Yeah, I do want to put some numbers on that because 2 weekly finishes better than QB7. His last 5 fantasy finishes for Mahomes, 31st, 11th, 14th, 8th, and 14th. He's had more than 2 passing touchdowns twice this entire season against the Bears and the Chargers. The one thing I will say, though, is overall, and part of this is the running game, which has been successful, their offensive EPA has been really good the last 2 weeks. So maybe there is some hope in the fact that the offense is working, but it has not been working from a fantasy perspective.
Dude, they scored 19 points last night. I'm throwing out EPA on that one.
Oh, I'm
19
using,
points.
I'm with you. I'm just saying I'm using metrics to project forward, right? Is there some hope here? I just laid out all the bad stuff. I'm saying maybe here's a little bit of a silver lining.
Fair enough. So, I mean, it's still Patrick Mahomes. I get it. And they play the Bills next week, a defense that was not what it was. But it's not. You think the Bills are scared of the Chiefs' defense, the Chiefs' offense right now?
No.
I mean, they're an average offense.
Yeah.
For the most part. That's what they've been this year. Yeah.
The hard part is knowing that you've got this superstar at the quarterback position. And I feel like when I watch him throw the ball to like MVS, it's like, why are you even throwing the ball to him? You guys are so not on the same page. It feels like you don't practice with each other. It looks like everything is off here. Everything that used to be like Mahomes is able to elevate those guys around him this year is just so frustrating.
Really, really tiny, quick tangent. Mike and I we talked about actually all together about how, like, this, and often the only comparison to Tom Brady is Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs, Tom Brady with the Patriots. And it's like, go through a 20-year run with the Patriots, and it never happened what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. Like, again, I'm not saying that like that's the only thing that matters here. What matters is that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs need to be better for fantasy football purposes. But it was just like such a given for 20 years that you just had this elite, maybe more like the last 15, 16 years of it, like an elite fantasy production. Even the year that Brady, his final year in New England, they're terrible. They averaged 27 points per game. And I say terrible with like air quotes, really. So anyways, it's just, there's a standard that you expect out of the Chiefs offense simply by having Patrick Mahomes, and we are nowhere near that standard right now.
Yeah, I'd be a little more concerned too if offense across the league wasn't down. Like the league has changed in the last couple of years. It's been, the offensive play just isn't as good. Even great offenses aren't scoring at that level. Like no one's near like 4 touchdowns a game. It's just not happening.
Man, defenses are up, offenses
the Lions
are down.
and the Eagles are around 4 touchdowns a game.
They probably are. For half.
Yeah, they're around somewhere around there. By the way, what was the number on Travis Kelce's for red zone catches yesterday?
6.
6?
Yeah.
I think I was the only one to say no.
You said no.
What did he have in that?
He had 4.
He had 4.
What's going on with that? Like, this is one of those things. Like, that's crazy that if you don't have someone else in this offense, it feels like Patrick Mahomes should target Travis Kelce 17 times.
And this, again, is one of those, you got to be careful. I don't want it to sound like blasphemy.
Uh-oh.
It's not to the Cooper Kupp level. But the physical dominance from Travis Kelce,
it's not the same.
When you watch it, does not feel the same.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's super fair.
He might be 10% inferior to where he was last year, and that 10% could help account for some of the dip in production.
Biggest concern, Taylor was in the house.
Oh,
he had a down game.
And it was a down game.
That was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's true.
That was supposed to be the signal he'd have a big game. Didn't happen.
Hey, let's talk about something positive here really quickly. I was not on the show last week, but Mike Clay, you gave us a parlay for Fantasy Focus.
Yeah.
Freaking crushed it.
Yeah, this is right out of the playbook. The playbook had a good week. We're 10-2 so far. The losses in the playbook were Gardner Minshew. I had under 1.5 passing touchdowns. He got it late in overtime.
Yeah, in overtime.
That one burned you. And then, of course, the other one naturally was Christian Watson. Of course, under catches, and he crushed that one. So the only 2 we got wrong. But our parlay last week, Najee Harris over 12.5 rushing attempts. He blew that, but he was almost there before the lightning delays.
Yep.
Curtis Samuel over 3.5 catches. That was an easy one as well. Christian McCaffrey was the sweat. He had 17 carries. So I had under 17.5. So we just got that one. But it worked out nicely for us.
Yeah, good looking parlay there.
There we go.
Mike.
I'm 1 for 1 on the parlays. Let's go. We'll do it again this week.
Absolutely. So we'll keep doing that every single week. that'll be a really fun thing for us to be able to do. Make sure you download the ESPN Bet app. You must be 21 or older. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also, you can check out Props That Pop. I've gone 6-0 over the last 2 weeks on Props That Pop.
Let's go.
So this has been a really good one.
You should dab on them, actually.
It's been really, ooh, that's not bad, Fields Yates.
I don't know how to do that kind of stuff.
I'm going to leave that to professionals.
Mike's too busy yeeting to worry about dabbing.
No, I'm too busy getting yeeted.
That's what it is.
That's what happens.
All right, back here on Fantasy Focus, we're going to close this one out. Field Yates, Mike Clay, my name is Daniel Dopp. We got a Monday Night Football preview. Yep. Bengals and Jags field. When you're looking at this one, at the Bengals side of the football, what are you looking at?
I am looking at whether they can be a functional offense tonight.
Yeah,
because they were not very close to it this past weekend. This Jaguars defense may be a little bit better than you might realize. Can Jake Browning complete more than 50% of his passes to Jamar Chase without them being tipped?
Oof.
That would be the bar that I'm looking to clear tonight.
We're going to get T. Higgins in this one, though. Correct?
We are, yeah. So, yeah, we'll just see. Like, Jake Browning as a player that the Bengals have backed as the clear-cut backup to Joe Burrow. Their faith in him will either be rewarded or will be perhaps criticized after tonight's game. So, I'm trying to see whether they have any sort of a passing offense because their rushing attack is basically non-existent right now.
Yeah, I mean, if Browning attempts 35 passes in this game, a fair number. I want 25 to T and Chase. That's what I want.
That's
like if you're going to lose games or they're going to struggle here without Burrow, fine. Just we want fantasy points. Throw them to our guys.
Yep. And then on the other side of the ball for the Jaguars, my question is, I mean, you're starting most everybody that you've got. You're starting Travis Etienne, you're starting Evan Ingram, and you're starting both the wide receivers. It's just, what is Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk going to look like? We've had some back and forth weeks from Calvin Ridley.
Zay Jones is playing?
And Zay Jones is going to be there. I don't love when Zay Jones is playing for Calvin Ridley's sake.
No, you do.
No, we do for Calvin Ridley. We don't for Kirk.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Said that backwards.
Yeah. So Calvin Ridley will probably have 35 fantasy points tonight. No, I don't have a good reason for why it happens to be that is a deciding metric in Calvin Ridley's upside. But
it's worked so far.
Yeah, that's how it's been. Here's what I'm looking for tonight. Evan Ingram. You and I talking right now.
This is what I was going to say.
End zone, baby. Let's find it. Let's find the end zone tonight because I don't want you to become the 2023 version of Deontay Johnson. You are pacing for 100 catches this year and 0 touchdowns. Let's change that pace to like 1.5 touchdowns. Because if you get one tonight, we'll be on pace for 1.5 for this entire season. I want that for you more than you realize that I want it for you. That's all I'm asking for in life is one Evan Ingram touchdown. Yeah,
speaking of which, how about Deontay scored again yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, he's a touchdown machine.
That is 2 touchdowns.
But it's a good reminder. Once you break the dam, you could become a touchdown machine.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we've seen that over and over. I remember like Melvin Gordon as a rookie. I think he had 198 touches and no touchdowns.
0 touchdowns.
They like 8 the next year.
I think it was like 12 the next year.
Yeah, and that's a weird trend. If you, as a rookie, or actually I think it's anyone, like if over the last decade, if you have like 2 or fewer touchdowns on 170 plus touches. I always write about this every year in the touchdown regression piece. Like the average touchdown total for those players the next year, if they get same volume, is like 8 per game. It's unreal. Like they just bounce back.
2023 version. Who's had like terrible touchdown luck?
I mean, Ingram's poster boy right now. I don't know. I have to think about that one. I don't know off the top of my head.
That would be a good question.
Think about that.
Patriots offense in general.
It's might be something like that. I have to think about that one.
Patriots. If you took the Patriots and the Jets offense and smash them with the Panthers offense, how many points a game would they score?
The Panthers.
You get all 3 of those offenses together.
Who is it? Panthers,
Patriots, and Jets. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, who's the quarterback there? Bryce Young. I don't know. 2 per game.
2 per game,
which is a big upgrade.
Yeah,
for some of those offenses.
Jets will be undefeated. I think it scored 2 touchdowns a game.
Oh my gosh, stop it.
Close.
I mean, seriously. All right, let's pick this game really quickly. You got Bengals and the Jaguars field. Which way are you going?
Jaguars.
Yeah, I'll take the 8-point favorites here, Jags.
8-point favorites. Yeah, I mean they got when you get Jake Brown in center, it's not something that you're
Jacksonville has 3 losses. I mean they might get the 1 seed in the AFC.
They can. They very much can.
Crazy. Yeah. That is crazy.
They got that slow start too.
I'm going to take the Jaguars as well in this one really quickly. Christian Watson will be a top 24 wide receiver or better, minimum of 8 games played. That is what you were hoping for, Mike.
Wow. And I don't know where he is right now. I probably have it here, but he let's see, he is 40th on points per game, so he'd have to be like red hot down the stretch.
You never know.
Up there.
Yeah.
It is possible.
You never
He's
know.
40th in 2 huge games, 4 touchdowns in 3 games.
Yeah,
he has to do what he did late last year.
That's exactly what he needs to do.
Yeah, it's possible.
Another huge ending of this season, so that you can have a bunch of touchdowns. Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
Great to be back, Daniel.
It's been
great
fun.
to have you
You're
back.
welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mike Clay.
That reminds me of my daughter when someone else, when she sneezes, she goes, "Bless you," to herself. She's not even 2, so she doesn't know. But
no big deal.
Chew, bless you.
Bless you.
so
Just want to make
cutest
sure that
thing
we're
ever.
covered there.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Go check out Monday Night Football. We got a really fun game tonight. Also, there's a Manning cast tonight. It'll be a ton of fun.
Payne and Eli hanging.
We'll be back tomorrow talking Tuesday. Week 14 is ahead of us.
Waiver wires.
See you guys.